You're listening to Kentucky Running, presented by John's Run Walk Shop in Lexington. Help others find this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing in your podcast app. This episode is sponsored by Curex Insoles.
Hey runners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Kentucky Running. I'm your host, Matt Reno, and it is March, and one of my favorite things about March is the Reforest Frenzy. That's happening on March 22nd. Formerly known as the Reforest 5K, we renamed this annual race because we've added a 10K and 1 mile dash options. So more opportunities for you to have a great time for a great cause at Heisel Farm Park. Learn more about the Reforest Frenzy and sign up at johnsbluegrassracing.com. We're going to learn more about the great cause that this race supports. Reforest the Bluegrass. My guest today is Heather Wilson, Senior Program Manager of Urban and Community Forestry and former city arborist for Lexington Fayette Urban County Government. We'll talk to her in a little bit. We're also going to talk to our ASICS rep. ASICS is once again sponsoring the Reforest Frenzy, so we're going to learn about a couple new shoes from them. But first, I want to talk to John's Run Walk Shop General Manager Riley Marshall. Riley, how are you doing on this fine pre-spring day?
I am great, Matt. Thank you again for having me.
So Riley, tell us a little bit about the history of John's Run Walk Shop, working with Reforest the Bluegrass and setting up the Reforest Frenzy.
So John's Run Walk Shop has been very big on conservancy since its inception in 1978. So when we were expanding the number of races we were doing as a company, one of the first things that came to mind was Reforest the Bluegrass, not just because of our conservancy values as a business, but because of how special that event is to me personally. I have very many fond memories of Reforest the Bluegrass, planting trees as a community across all sorts of Lexington parks and locations in an attempt to help increase the urban canopy. This will be the 26th year of Reforest the Bluegrass, and we as a community have planted around 215,000 trees for around a tenth of the cost that it would have taken to contract that work out. So not only is this a community event, but it's a huge, huge money saver for the city of Lexington as well. We've had a number of years of the Reforest 5K at this point, and as the race has grown, we've decided to add more distances this year. It is now also including a 10K and a 1 mile dash, because we have all sorts of people who like to participate in this event and use their running or walking to help reforest the bluegrass.
Thanks a lot, Riley. Looking forward to Reforest Frenzy on March 22nd.
Yes, and even if you can't join us for the Reforest Frenzy, please do join us on April 19th at Jacobson Park for the actual Reforest the Bluegrass event. We will be there as an exhibitor, and I will be there as a volunteer planting lots of trees. Come find me.
We've got our ASICS tech rep, Meredith McKinney, back on Kentucky Running today, and we're talking about a couple new shoes that we've got in the store. We've had the updated Nimbus. The Gel Nimbus 27 has been out since January. People are loving it. Very comfortable shoe. And we have a brand new update to the Cumulus. So Meredith, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so Cumulus is our moderate cushion shoe in our Legend lineup. When we talk about Cumulus, fit customers in Cumulus, we really focus on the smooth comfort that it provides. So lightweight, versatile, great for those runners, walkers, Orange Theory, those runners that want a shoe that they can take from a tempo run to a fartlek to their long run, right? So super versatile. In terms of updates, we have a brand new upper. It's a jacquard mesh, very lightweight, very breathable, reduces the need for additional overlays. So this really allows for those that maybe have a wider foot to give them a little more room, a little more accommodating to that. We also have thickened up our Fluid Ride outsole. So increased durability, better traction. It's a lot more kind of grippy, sticky to the ground. So as we're hopefully transitioning out of this winter weather, this is a good shoe for that rain that will probably be next up in Kentucky. And then in terms of feature-wise, we did add a nice heel pull tab. So it slides on real easy. And then we updated the tongue as well. So it's a little bit thinner and softer than your traditional mesh tongues that you see on most shoes that fall into this similar category.
If someone was between the Nimbus and the Cumulus, what are some key differences that you would point to?
So if you are looking for a lighter weight option, I would go with the Cumulus. It's a little bit less cushion, but still going to use the same foam and pure gel. It's going to help provide that really soft, smooth landing. Really main thing is the lightweightness. Both are going to have that heel pull tab. Both are going to have the same upper. We think of Nimbus, we think of more of like your long run cruiser. Most runners, not all, but a lot of runners enjoy a little more cushion the longer they go. If someone really needs that, or if they're having any sort of like lower leg trouble, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, tight calves, that kind of stuff, they might gear more towards the Nimbus with that extra cushion. But overall, similar in terms of the materials we're using, just a little bit different in terms of use depending on what the runner needs.
And let's talk about the Super Blast. What can you tell us about that?
Super Blast is our bounciest, most responsive shoe. It is not carbon plated, so it's kind of in a silo of itself in terms of our ASICS lineup. You are going to get a lighter weight, higher cushion than a Nimbus. We think of Super Blast, we use that as a catch-all shoe, right? Great for recovery, but also we have tons of our community that utilizes it for marathons. So it is versatile in terms of the use. And then in terms of actual like features of the shoe, foam wise, it's going to have a combination of our turbo foam and our Blast Plus foam. So plus you're going to see in, our Cumulus, our Nimbus, any of our stability models, but that turbo is what you actually find in our carbon plated Metaspeed series. The shoe is unique in that you're getting a little combination of both foams. And again, you can utilize it from, a short run to a marathon. Definitely one of our fan favorite cult following shoes.
Meredith, thank you for giving us updates on these new shoes. You can check out Cumulus and the Super Blast at Jones Run Walk Shop. And just want to say thank you to you and ASICS for supporting us in the Reforest Frenzy on March 22nd.
Yes, you're welcome. Looking forward to it.
All right, Heather, thanks for coming on Kentucky Running. We're really excited to talk about Reforest, the Bluegrass, especially since we're doing the Reforest Frenzy this March. It's a fun race for a great cause, so we want to learn a little bit more about that cause today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about it.
Let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your role with Reforest, the Bluegrass, and with the city?
Sure. I am program manager for urban forestry with the city, and so part of that is that I manage the Reforest the Bluegrass program. I've done that since 2016, and before that, it was managed by the other person that was in my role. I do pretty much everything tree related with Lexington, and I love this, and I love this race because it's a really great way to connect people that are outdoors with trees and broaden that scope of understanding for trees.
Great. Have you always had an interest in trees?
No.
Okay.
No, actually, I came to Kentucky to learn more about horses, and I didn't know anyone here in the horse world. And some friends introduced me to the Red River Gorge, and I just fell in love with that kind of environment. I've always been outdoorsy, but that just hooked me on trees, and being able to work with trees in an urban area has been awesome.
Gorgeous, beautiful place.
It is.
It makes sense that you would fall in love with trees
yes.
there. Yeah. For those who might not be familiar, can you explain what Reforest the Bluegrass is, how it got started?
Sure. Reforest the Bluegrass started in 1999. It was actually started as a water quality improvement project. The water quality engineer at the time, David Gabbard, is the one who started this program. And what he was noticing around Lexington, that we had all these streamways that were completely bare, grass right up to the edges. And so what that meant was that a lot of toxins and chemicals were rushing right across the grass, right into our waterways, and right into our entire town branch system. And so one of the best well-known ways to reduce that or to limit that or to control that is to have a vegetative buffer. And trees are a really great buffer for that because trees are kind of like those sentinels in an ecosystem, and then under them other things can grow because they are holding the soil, they're absorbing toxins out of the ground, they are creating space for other things to grow under them. It reduces the mowing all the way to the edge, which is healthier for our ecosystem as well as for our streams. So Reforest started with a goal of reforesting our waterways. And then as the years have gone by and we've been doing that, I can't remember how many acres that we've now reforested, but we've had to kind of move a little bit away from the actual edges of the water because we're running out of space that's directly connected to open waterways.
Okay, good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. Great problem. But we are always within a watershed. And in Lexington, all of the water kind of funnels to our main downtown. So wherever we are in Lexington, we are helping slow that movement of water across our fields, the chemicals across our fields, and getting absorbed by the trees that we're planting.
Awesome. What are some of the biggest environmental benefits that Lexington has seen as a result of Reforest?
Well, we have reduced levels of E. coli in our waterways. We have reduced levels of other toxins that have gotten directly into our waterways. So that's a ecological benefit we've directly benefited from. We have cooler areas around those waterways, which then increases the amount of macroinvertebrants and microinvertebrants that live within those water systems, which all help to clean our water. We have cooler temperatures around there for people to enjoy the outdoors. We have a lot of walking paths that have now been incorporated into these reforest sites, so people get to get out there and connect with each other. And that's not necessarily an ecological benefit, but that is a benefit of creating community connected to the trees. Air pollution is a big one, that trees reduce our toxins that are in the air that we breathe. Reduce flooding events, because again, unless it's a major, really quick, big storm, the trees will lessen that amount of water getting into our waterways by absorbing it through their root systems and using that water.
What challenges has the program faced over the years? How have you overcome them?
Yeah, we've had challenges. I guess our biggest challenges is finding locations. Again, like as we've been doing this for so long, we're running out of larger locations. And one of the great things about this program being so well received and growing is that more and more people come. And so we want to plant more and more trees. But having large enough spaces to do that can accommodate the parking and all the participants and the trees has been challenging. A good challenge to have, because that means we're doing what we're supposed to. So we are constantly trying to think about how we alter this in the future. Maybe having smaller spaces located throughout the city on the same day so that we can still get the number of trees out there and have enough opportunity for everyone that wants to join us to come. That's a logistic nightmare in my brain at the moment, so I have not figured out how to overcome that one. Aside from that, sometimes we have some challenges with the weather. Right. Originally, this event occurred in March, and so some years it was icy and snowing and 20 degrees, and some years it was in the 60s. So that was really hard for getting participants because when it's miserable outside, it's really hard to get excited to go out and plant trees.
Yeah.
So we did move it to April, and that's been really great. We usually have really great weather. We've had a couple crazy ones recently, but usually the weather is really conducive to that. Following that maybe is a challenge sometimes is when we don't have rain coming right behind it, because the trees go in the ground, and then we need rain to come pretty much right behind that to make sure that they are rooting well and watered into the ground. One of the challenges that maybe we didn't think of was a challenge was the use of materials that were not necessarily environmentally friendly, like the black mats that we used to put down over the trees. We have moved away from that in the past couple of years, and we're using wood chips to mulch them in. And
what were the black mats made out of?
Some kind of, they're like a visipore or something, so they're supposed to let water come through. They're supposed to be like open on the top, like fine mesh kind of, with so that water could drain through, but it didn't really do that great of a job, and they never decompose. And so you can go to our old sites, and they're still out there. So we've been slowly trying to pull those out of the environment. The other goal for those was to help keep invasives and weeds and grasses from growing up and taking over the trees. So that is a challenge that we're facing now with the wood chips, because it's organic and it decomposes, which has all the other benefits of feeding the soil, but weeds seed in there. Mm-hmm. And so having to figure out how we manage those so that the sites look approachable and not like a mess. And so maybe that's our biggest challenge, is that when they're young, they're like a baby forest, and they're wild and woolly, and it doesn't look like a forest does that we expect to see, But when we think of that in our brains, we think of like a 10 to 20-year-old forest, and then they're like big trees. But seedlings are babies, and it takes a lot of time for them to grow. And so it's going to look messy in the beginning. And sometimes, depending on where we are in the city, the neighbors or people visiting don't understand that while it doesn't look pristine, it's exactly as it's supposed to be.
Reforest Bluegrass is a one-day event, but is there a team managing it throughout the year to make sure that those small trees are growing into a forest the way they're supposed to?
For the most part. Until about 2016, we didn't have a designated staff to work in Reforest, the Bluegrass sites. They were just planted, and then everyone kind of walked away, and then nature happened. But a great example of how beneficial or how effective that is Masterson Station. If you drive into that park, you kind of drive through this forest system on both sides. That was our second Reforest Bluegrass site ever. And so back then, there was not management in there. And it's a real forest. Veterans Park, a lot of the trees out there are the same. Wellington Park is also that kind of example where it was planted that day and then everyone walked away. But we have real forest there. And all three of those situations were nothing but open grass field when we planted it. But now we do. We have a staff. I wish I had staff that was solely designated to manage in the Reforest sites. We don't. But we do get in there as often as we can. And we also collaborate with other groups. There's a couple groups at UK that come and help us do some work days to get rid of invasives and to replant some new species so that we have this multi-age forest coming up.
How important is community involvement in Reforest Bluegrass?
we couldn't do it without it. It is our number one piece of the puzzle that helps Reforest actually happen. It is all volunteer planted. We usually have 500 to 800 volunteers come out to help us plant that day. We've had as few as like 300 when the weather is really yucky, but still 300 people. We get a lot of trees planted. This is not something we could do in-house by ourselves. Community is everything with that.
What does a typical volunteer experience look like?
Yeah, so you'll come join us at any time during the window of our planting event that day. We have an education tent. You'll sign in. You get a free T-shirt, and then you can walk through our education tent. We have all kinds of people in there sharing information about the environment, about sustainability, about our sponsors and our collaborators with this. There's lots of activities for kids. From there, you'll go out to our planting site, which is just either a little, maybe 5-minute walk. If it's farther than that, or if you have small children or have mobility concerns, we will always have a way to get you to our planting site. Sometimes we have hay rides. Sometimes we have a little Kubota or golf carts to get people around. So there's no reason to not come because we make sure that everyone has access. Then you'll meet up with what we have called as a crew leader who takes small groups out to our planting and kind of goes through a demonstration of how you plant a tree seedling. There are spots marked throughout our planting site so that you'll have an idea of where to put your tree. And then we're all out there wandering around for any questions or to have help. You can stay out there as long as you want. You can plant 1 tree. You can plant 500 trees. It's up to you. And then at the end, come back to us. We have music. We'll have free food. We have pizza and usually hot dogs or something around like that. It's a fun day.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Has this led to a shift in public interest or awareness about urban forestry and planting over the last 25 years?
I think so. I like to hope so. I do know that we have entire generations of families that have come out since, I guess grandparents now have brought their children who now have children. And so I think it's definitely reached a broad audience. People get really excited about it. And then 2, connecting back to John's, on our 20th anniversary, this is when the Reforest 5K started, which is now the Reforest Frenzy. Mm-hmm. But it was an extension of Reforest, something we called branching out. And so we'd always had those singular planting areas for Reforest, but in branching out, we were encouraging public entities or private groups to engage and have plantings on their properties. And so we supplied trees for some of them. John's wound up joining us and offering this way to support us through another planting event, which happens with the Reforest Frenzy.
It's been great supporting this cause, right? Because environmentalism is a big thing for us.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're running, we want clean air to breathe in.
Exactly.
So what other community partnerships have you made over the years?
Subaru has historically been a great sponsor for us. They've been one of our big partners. KU has been with us since the beginning, and so has Kentucky American Water. Without the support of those 2 groups, we probably wouldn't have ever been able to start this. Our seedlings come from the Division of Forestry for the most part. We have connections with another local nursery, Oakland Tree Farm. We get some trees from her for this planting. Donut Days has always provided donuts for the early volunteers. Yes, they're a great partner. Good Foods Co-op has historically been a great partner. We're always reaching out to try to find more. Big Beaver has historically been a good one. This year we have Bartlett Tree as a sponsor for our Reforest, the Bluegrass. And Wild Ones and Big Bang have always been have big supporters. I feel like I'm missing 1 or 2, and so I'm remorse of not having that at the top of my head.
That's a lot. I hope they forgive you. But, and if someone wants to get involved on a community partnership level, if a business owner is listening to this right now, what can they do?
Well, they can certainly reach out to me, hwilson@lexingtonky.gov, or call 311 and ask to talk to Heather Wilson in Environmental Services. Monetary support is the way that we are able to afford to have our trees and provide all the fun things like the activities and T-shirts and food for the community. We do have some internal support with the city as well. So now, we didn't in the beginning, but we do have a designated budget for Reforest now. For groups to involve, we have sponsorship levels, and so I'm happy to share what those levels are. Also, we have volunteer opportunities if they want to come out and be crew leaders or help us man some of the tables that are in our tent or engage in that way. There are other opportunities, bringing groups out to help do the planting.
I want to take a quick break to tell you about Kentucky running sponsor Curex insoles, available at John's Run Walk Shop. Whether you're looking for more cushion or arch support when you're running, or just going through your day-to-day activities, Curex Run Pro insoles could be the solution you need. They offer flexible support and shock-absorbing cushioning from heel to toe, helping reduce fatigue, preventing common running injuries, and boosting performance. Dynamic arch support with a deep decoupled heel cup fits, wraps, and locks the heel in place to improve stability, reduce pressure, and provide a perfect fit. Curex Run Pro insoles feature a zero heel drop, providing the best fit in most running shoes with optimized motion for all running foot strikes. And they help manage moisture with a mesh top layer and premium foam cushioning to keep your feet dry and your running shoes fresh. They come in 3 profiles, high, medium, and low, to fit your individual arch type. Next time you're in John's Run Walk Shop, ask us to check out your arches and knee alignment so we can help you find the right pair of Curex Run Pro insoles for you. Learn more at johnsrunwalkshop.com/insoles. Looking ahead, what are the goals for Reforest Bluegrass for the next 5 to 10 years?
Reimagine how we do it, because again, we are running out of large pieces of property that are publicly owned that we can do this. But also going back to maybe some of our first sites and adding in a second layer to there. They are slightly naturally regenerating, but we're also always fighting invasives and other plants that are there that we don't want in there. Our team has thought a lot about going back to reforest sites and hosting another event there and putting in the next generation of seedlings that we want to have in those sites. Work days. I would love to establish more work days. And we've actually started a Reforest Bluegrass stewardship program. We are just getting it up and running, and we're trying to find our feet with that. But creating stewards that can help us throughout the year go in and help manage invasive plants or make sure that our trees are growing, kind of keeping an eye on things for us. And then another thing that I would really like to do, and we've talked about this a couple of times, is create trails through our reforest sites. I would love to have it almost like AT style, like where you've got like little sign-in sheets and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a lot of fun. And then figuring out a way to connect our sites. They're so disconnected, and which is fine, but connectivity of sites is so important for wildlife movement and for the broader benefits of trees for our city. And then creating ways that people can easily get to sites. So I don't know if that means like bike trails connecting sites, or if it's getting on bus lines that could get people like from one site to another pretty quickly. Those are kind of our big picture, like how do we make this more cohesive?
How do you choose the plants that you bring to Reforest?
Well, they're always native, so
Okay.
native to Kentucky. We do a lot of regionally native, so native to the Bluegrass region, though we do bring in other species that are kind of around the edges. We're in a location as far as forests go where our species diversity is very, very high. And so we're on the most northern edge for a lot of species, and we're on the most southern edge for other species. So we can incorporate things that are not necessarily Bluegrass native, but always native, as diverse as possible. We are in urban areas, so it's important to think about where trees would exist naturally in a forest based off of contour or light or soil levels or soil like limestone versus clay soils and such like that. But we are urban, and so we have kind of a mishmash of all of that now. So we're not as limited as if you would be like out in a forest and where you would find sycamore basically only in a bottomland. In urban areas, you can kind of put trees, for the most part, in a reforest site as a mix. But that said, it is really important to choose the right tree for the right place. So I don't want to get those two messages mixed up there, because if we're talking about a reforest area, we're not thinking about sidewalks and roads and streetlights and things like that. So in those situations, you have to make sure you're doing the right tree in the right place for a different set of parameters. But for reforest sites, it's native. And I don't know, we get excited about bringing in species that we have a few of here and maybe encouraging them to be more prevalent. Again, working within the parameters of Kentucky and kind of our region.
And how can Lexington residents take action beyond Reforest Bluegrass to support urban forestry efforts year-round?
One of our goals for urban forestry is to increase our tree canopy to have an overall tree canopy coverage of at least 30% in Lexington. That's for all the environmental benefits, from water absorption to cleaner air to reduced noise problems to increased health. The best way to do that is to plant trees on your private property. We can help on public property, and we're doing what we can on civically owned or civically accessible places such as schools and other locations that are not necessarily Lexington and Fayette Urban County government owned. So on private property, planting trees is the best way to do that. And you don't have to plant a big tree. You can start with a small tree. It's actually better, and they will get there pretty quickly to become a big tree. If you have questions about what trees or how to do it, you can always reach out to us in urban forestry with the city here. You can also reach out to your extension agent through the University of Kentucky. There's lots of opportunity out there to learn. You're probably not going to do it wrong. Like, it's really hard to do it wrong, just as long as you're not planting under a power line. And if you need guidance for places like that easement, that space between your sidewalk and the street, please reach out to us. But other than that, trees are kind of like children. They're pretty resilient as long as you start them out well. So plant trees, reach out to us, get involved with groups. If you're interested in learning how to identify trees and help with our inventory, I'm more than happy to make that happen. And I think just the more that we're all engaged and understand trees, that they're not inherently dangerous, and that as long as we're taking care of them, they're actually safe and really important, I'm more than happy to talk with people and help steward that.
Of course, as part of the Reforest Frenzy, one of the things that you can get with your registration is a tree, and you can take it home and plant it in your yard. So that's a very unique race prize that I don't know where else you would get a tree.
That's right. And I love that. That's probably one of my favorite things about the Frenzy, that we can jointly get trees out to the public.
And as we wrap up, what's one thing you wish more people understood about trees and their role in our environment?
I think I wish more people understood that what we see above ground in a tree, that big canopy, it needs to be supported by what's underground. And so your soil and not disturbing roots and not injuring the trunk of that tree are the only things that are going to keep our trees healthy and in our system, and are as important as making sure that we care for what we can see above ground. So the root systems of trees, if given the opportunity and the space, are generally 2 times the size of what we see above ground in the tree canopy. And they grow out. They grow down, but generally not more than 3 feet. More of their roots are out. And if you think about that and how something is stabilized in the ground, those roots are stabilizing what's above ground. And so taking care of your roots, taking care of the bottom of the tree, is more important than taking care of the top of the tree, or equally so at least. It's just that we can see what's above ground. And of course you're going to prune your trees because one, you can see it, but also the pruning makes sure that you are safe, that your buildings are safe, that your cars and pedestrians and your friends. And so pruning is really important for safety. The tree doesn't care, but in an urban setting, we have to care because it's good stewardship. But just making sure that taking care of what's below ground is just as important. So watering when we have a drought. We haven't had rain for 2 weeks. Water your trees, even big trees. And this is only in the summer. This doesn't count for late October through probably April, the end of April. You don't need to water unless you've just planted something. But in the summer, if we have times all the way till the middle of October, if we have times of no rain for 2 weeks, water your trees.
Well, Heather, it was great talking to you, learning more about urban reforestry and Reforest the Bluegrass. And we'll see you at Reforest the Bluegrass on April 19th. And before that, we'll see you at the Reforest Frenzy, March 22nd. You can sign up at johnsbluegrassracing.com. We'll put links to everything where you can learn more about Reforest the Bluegrass in the show notes. Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.